So today we are going to run this like an investigation. The case we are looking at is a familiar one for many CIOs and business leaders, and that is enterprises have invested in applications, automations, and now AI. Yet for many employees, the daily experience of work still feels fragmented, manual, and tiring. So the question is who or what is killing enterprise productivity? Our argument is that the issue is not one bad system or one missing tool, it is the orchestration gap. Work happens across systems, but the experience of work is still trapped inside individual systems. Today, we will look at the evidence, identify the usual suspects, and reveal why digital experience orchestration platforms or DXOPs are emerging as a new category. Andrea will later bring this to life through the myMeta lens. I'll first set up the investigation from Everest Group perspective. So let's open the case file. Let's look at the crime scene. Imagine the modern enterprise as a very sophisticated crime scene. There is no shortage of technology. In fact, the scene is full of it. So the average knowledge worker today operates across 15 to 40 enterprise applications, dashboards, AI assistants, workflow tools, communication channels, approval queues, policy documents, notifications. Everything looks active, everything looks digital, everything looks busy. But that is the problem. Busy is not the same as productive. One of the biggest risks in enterprise technology today is what we call the productivity illusion. The productivity illusion is the belief that because we have added more technology, more automation, and more AI, we must have improved productivity. But if the user still has to stitch together the work manually, the productivity gain is incomplete. Let me give you an example and make this very practical. So take procurement in, let's say, a manufacturing company. A single approval may involve Coupa for the purchase request, SAP S/4HANA for the purchase order, Workday for cost center approval, and a fraud screening tool for risk checks. On paper, the process is connected. However, in reality, if we look at it, the user still has to move across multiple systems. They have to check different pieces of information, make sure the approval is compliant. That slows down the cycle time and increases governance risk, even when all the right systems are technically in place. So when we say the work should come to the user, we are really saying that enterprise should stop making employees act as the integration layer. So the crime scene has three cues. First, work is cross-system. Second, the experience remains system-bound. And third, AI is adding more capability, but not always more coherence. And that brings us to the victim. The victim in this investigation is productivity, but this productivity loss is not always very dramatic. I would say it is much quieter. So something like it is 5 minutes lost searching for the right field, 10 minutes reconciling information, another few minutes checking policy, a delay because the approval went to the wrong queue, or a missed insight because the dashboard was not opened in time. So individually, these moments may look small, but collectively they become material. As per Everest Group's analysis, the application fragmentation cost can be around 30 minutes per employee per day. So for an organization with 500 employees, this can translate into roughly 57,500 hours per year and an estimated hidden cost of about US dollar 2.8 million. And remember, that is not necessarily because employees are doing anything wrong. They are often working very hard. But the problem is that they are working around digital friction. It is an operational cost which affects cycle time, process error rates, policy adherence, adoption, and ROI from existing platforms. So I'll take a pause, Andrea, and I would love to bring you in here. So from myMeta perspective, when you speak with enterprise clients and partners, does this match with what you see when clients describe their day-to-day enterprise reality?
Yes, Sarah, it absolutely matches. We see what we call friction across the enterprise every day in every conversation we do with our customers and with our partners. We have developed a methodology along these years to identify this friction, and we can see that through a number of different data points. A very clear indication of these data points are tickets that are submitted to IT or to the specific department where this friction is happening. And we can see that even just level 1 tickets that are normally related to very, very simple information that the employee cannot find are extremely high. Then, there are surveys, there are emails sent to IT and support, etc. We recently worked with a very large customer, and only in HR, they actually counted for 100,000 tickets per year being submitted across the support team. And this actually had involved 9 FTEs having to deal with these tickets, plus the support from the partner that is doing the application maintenance. And then you can imagine it translates in millions of lost productivity, millions of euros in terms of lost productivity. So friction is everywhere. Companies are aware of this friction, but they are not fully aware of how far and deep it goes inside the company across all the manual processes, as you have clearly highlighted: context switching, manual data re-entry, etc. And from our point of view, yes, AI is actually coming to help, is actually increasing productivity, but there is a big risk here of having AI as an isolated, out of context, very powerful tool that will not really show the full potential, and at the same time might become, for the average user, an additional tool to understand how to use in the right moment, at the right time, in the right place, how to prompt, how to interact with it. So it's not as simple as it looks.
Yeah, totally agree with you on this, Andrea, and particularly the number of 100,000 tickets just for HR. That's a huge number. So clearly the victim is productivity, but let us now bring in the suspects, right? So who are the usual suspects behind this? The first suspect is application sprawl. So enterprises have added more systems over time. Each system solves a functional need, but the overall landscape becomes very complex. Second one, which Andrea, you were also saying around disconnected AI. So intelligence is appearing in more places, but it is not always connected to the execution. The third is workflow handoffs. A process moves from one system to another, but the context does not always move with it. Fourth one would be governance after the fact. And this is the most important one, I would say. Many organizations apply policy checks, audit controls, and compliance reviews. Downstream, that creates rework. The better model is to embed governance in the flow of work at the point of execution for your employees. The last one is user experience trapped inside systems. So destination-based software. This is the idea that every task requires the user to go somewhere: a portal, an application, a dashboard, an assistant, or a queue. And here's the twist: on their own, each suspect explains part of the problem, but the real culprit is actually deeper. And the real culprit is the absence of orchestration across experience, workflows, data, AI, and governance. This is an important distinction which I would like to call out. The answer is not always to replace the application estate. In many enterprises, that is expensive, very risky, slow. The more urgent question is, how do we make the existing estate work together in a way that feels coherent to the user without any kind of re-platforming? So before we reveal the category and the solution for it, let us pause and bring the audience into the investigation. So here's the question for everyone. Sylvia, over to you.
Yes, feel free to pick up top 2 answers, and we will be publishing results briefly. Nice, they are coming in. We're almost there. A few more votes.
So, Era, I wouldn't really know which one to choose. It's actually all of these are very relevant to me. So I'm very curious to see what the results, what people think here are the biggest barriers.
Okay, are you ready for the reveal? This second reveal of today. I'm going to publish the results. So the one that gained the much percentage is AI is fragmented across platforms. And the second one is governance is unclear.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Era, if you want, I can start commenting and then leave it to you. This is actually, there's a big majority. So people really agree on AI is fragmented across platforms. It's not just a little bit over. I would say that between that and governance, they take really the almost the full audience. We are definitely seeing this across the enterprise customers that we're working with. Our view is that there are a lot of very interesting pilots or projects that tend to be dedicated to specific issues and support specific platforms. And we actually see an adoption curve of these AI projects, which is very steep at the beginning, and then it goes through a very rapid decline soon after because of the actual lack of connection to the context and to the the overall workflow that the user has to go through. And so when it starts very quickly in terms of adoption, and then it goes down almost as rapidly because people do not really see this as an integrated tool that can support them through their process. And that actually has a double impact. As the adoption goes down, enterprises or people that are actually working on training these agents are actually starting to deflect the resources and concentrate less in terms of growing the capacity of these AI models because they see that the adoption is really stalling. So it is interesting to see that the audience really agrees. Governance is also very important. I think the agents are only as reliable as they are really governed across the enterprise. The fact that you can audit, you can understand which agent can actually interact in which kind of process is extremely important. So interesting that they all agree on that.
Yeah, and Andrea, I would say the results are not surprising. Those were our suspects also, disconnected AI governance. This is what I'm seeing in my enterprise company conversations as well, wherein the leaders and the users, they're not really trusting the AI output. And there is this long chain of applications which have come up which do not provide the kind of AI experience which some of the leading platforms are providing, right? So AI capability is also isolated in few applications only. So yeah, great stuff. Thank you to the audience for participating in the poll. We'll move ahead and we'll actually bring in the witnesses now, right? So the first witness is Digital Adoption Platform or DAP. DAPs, they help users navigate applications, provide guidance, support adoption through step-by-step walkthroughs, tools, tooltips, hints, or notifications. They are valuable, especially when the problem is user training, task guidance, user onboarding within an application. But they do not fully orchestrate workflows across systems. The second witness, which I would like to bring in, is workflow integration and automation tools. These tools connect systems and automate process steps, so they are important for back-end coordination. But the front-end user experience often remains fragmented, especially when there is judgment, exception, or cross-functional decisions are involved. And the third one is AI Copilot. So AI, they can summarize, they can recommend, they can generate, classify, provide assistance. But AI becomes truly valuable when it is embedded into the workflow moment. Otherwise, users receive insight in one place and still they have to execute somewhere else. So the judge's verdict is clear. These categories help, but none fully align experience, workflow execution, AI, and governance. And this is where DXOP comes in. So this is the reveal moment. Digital experience orchestration platforms, or DXOPs, they are emerging to address the execution gap in enterprise technology. At Everest Group, we define DXOP as a unified technology layer which connects front-end human experience with back-end intelligence, orchestrating workflows, data, and AI across enterprise systems without requiring any kind of replatforming. So let me simplify that for you. DXOP is not another destination. It is not asking employees to go to one more portal. It is not replacing the systems of record. It is not saying every enterprise must throw away its existing application landscape and start again. Instead, DXOP sits on top of the enterprise systems and helps bring the right action, the right context, and the right intelligence into the user's current flow of work. The key shift is that systems become execution endpoints. So the user does not need to understand where a piece of data lives or which systems own which step. The experience in itself becomes more fluid. So let us now look at the architecture behind this category. At the bottom, you'll see we have enterprise systems. So your ERP, CRM, HCM, ITSM, collaboration platforms, or other types of systems of record. DXOP does not replace these systems. It treats them as headless execution endpoints, right? That means the system can still own the data, the logic, and transaction, but the user does not always need to experience the system as a destination. Above that sits the data and semantic layer. So this layer provides business meaning. It includes process intelligence, analytics, knowledge, ontology, rules, and context. So this matters because AI without context can be noisy. AI without business context cannot become actionable. So at the center, if you see above the data plus semantic layer is your orchestration layer. This is the engine room. It manages workflow sequencing, the decision routing, AI coordination, connectors, and rules. It determines what happens next, which system needs to be called, what action should be surfaced, what guardrails to apply. At the top is the experience layer. So this is where fluid UX becomes visible to the user through contextual widgets, embedded actions, guidance, notifications, proactive AI assistance. So fluid UX here means that interface is no longer fixed. It becomes dynamic. It appears when needed, and it adapts based on the role, the workflow state, policy context, and business need. The important point here is that the user interacts in the flow of work. They do not have to move across every system to complete the process. And this is why I believe the idea of SaaS as a software destination will begin to change. SaaS in itself will not disappear. The systems of record will continue to matter deeply, but the way users experience software will shift. So instead of logging into a destination for every task, users will increasingly expect those software moments to appear where the work is happening. So, Andrea, I have described the architecture from a category perspective. So over to you for the field evidence and how are you bringing this to life at myMeta?
Thank you, Era. Thank you. We would like to share with you a use case from a customer. But before doing that, I wanted to pause for a moment on this idea of the end of software as a destination. So we all have been reading almost on a daily basis, all the news that we've been fed in terms of SaaS is actually ending, AI is going to end. They call it SaaS apocalypse, but anyways, the AI is going to end software as we know it. And I think the revolution, from my point of view, is coming, but it's not exactly what we think it is, where AI is actually going to replace the user interface. What we think is actually happening is that software as a destination, software as a place where the user has to go or let's say has to chase to find information, to do a transaction, etc. As Era was saying, this is actually coming to an end. Software becomes a moment, and the moment is the right combination of data, intelligence, transaction comes to the user no matter where the user is, but it comes at the right moment. And that is the concept of fluid UX. So yes, we are going through a revolution, but we like to see this as a revolution that actually brings all the intelligence that the enterprises have been building, not just in the last year with AI, but in many previous years with building digital systems, really bringing it to the user where the user needs it. There is a concept here that is very important. Our enterprise work is actually broken by design, and this is due to years and years and years of stratification of solutions that are actually built as silos, while our work is actually spanning across most of the time across all of these silos, and the space that is in between these different silos is actually owned by no one. As Era was showing before, there are a lot of solutions that actually help the user navigate through this complexity. You have digital adoption platforms, you have integration platforms, you have RPAs that automate certain tasks. But the thing is, from a user point of view, when the user has to act and execute a specific process that mostly happens across several systems, there's a lot of gaps in between these systems, and AI is not actually bridging those gaps. AI can support within specific silos, but it's not really bridging those gaps. So what the Fluid UX does is actually it creates a glue across those gaps and actually brings the right intelligence, the right data, and the right transaction where the user is, regardless of the underlying system. So that's an introduction. So we're actually going to walk you through now a use case where basically there has been a big so the customer understood what the problem was. The problem, and I will frame it in a moment, it's in a very important HR process, in particular doing performance management, and they have been developing all the different signals and creating the intelligence around the signals to really understand the overall well-being in the company, employee well-being in the company across several dimensions. These signals were there, but unfortunately, they were not surfacing at the right time when the actual manager really needed to have the specific conversation. And then, resignation letters are arriving, you have bad attrition that you are not expecting, et cetera, et cetera. And this creates obviously a big problem for the company. So if we go ahead, we're actually going to show on a slide with actually what this means. So this company actually developed, as I was saying, a very intelligent system that gathered signals from a lot of different sources regarding important metrics related to employee well-being. So here you see a few of them. You have employee attrition risk, you have discrimination risk, you have disengagement risk, and productivity risk as being the major topics. And these were actually created through an AI model that analyzed a lot of these different signals across surveys, across emails, anonymized, of course, across different discussions. And this was actually very good at creating, very interesting dashboard for management, interesting quarterly dashboard for the top management, but it was not really, this intelligence was not really getting to the right place where it was needed. Imagine some of these having to get into during a one-to-one period, or even more importantly, having to be really fully contextualized during the performance period. And this is actually what this customer asked us. What you see on the left side of the screen is actually the performance management dashboard of this company. And where you see the HR dashboard view global is actually myMeta overlaying the intelligence that comes from the AI model that the company has been built. So from being an external model that the manager had to view and consult during critical periods, actually this actually becomes fully part of the performance discussion, and it is triggered by the fact that there are specific metrics that are red or that are supposed to be flagged. It is overlaid with the context of the specific manager, obviously only the employees that manager can see, and already being able to flag the information that are relevant for the discussion. If we move to the next slide, you can see here that basically this is a combination. So we were talking about fluid UX. What happens is that myMeta on the fly combines two different dimensions. On the left side of your screen, you can see indicators and performance. The indicators are actually coming from the AI model. Performance is coming actually from the underlying performance management system. The indicators are, so the manager can actually flip back and forward between performance criteria and risk indicators. It can actually sort through the different team members, or it can go to the various team members. It can see colored, in red, the ones that are highly at risk, and then AI is actually providing an indication of what is the retention analysis, for example, in this case. And when moving into the right side of the screen, where you actually see the performance not only is actually presented in a more intelligible way that the actual system, the underlying system was presenting with the radar view, but as the manager goes through the performance form, the actual suggestion that the AI provides to manage specific risk indicators are included inside the performance management, so that the manager can actually utilize that during the discussion, and then to provide the actual feedback to the user, and then the actual rating for in terms of performance. So here is a very clear example where you had two separate systems, where a manager had to flip back and forth, try to find the right employee, then go back to the form and combine the two performance and risk indicators together, while myMeta is actually blending the two things together. We are not, again, here we are not replicating any platform. We are not creating any additional system. What myMeta is doing is actually orchestrating, as Era was showing, is actually orchestrating the intelligence on one side, the data on the other side, bringing it together, providing the right recommendation. And so the manager, in a seamless way, in a combined interface, is capable of going through the performance management with all the information that are actually required. All right, so if we move to the next slide. So again, software stops being a destination. You see the concept of destination here is, I first go to my HR platform in this case, and then I go into my AI model to look at the information that are required to really understand the risk levels, and becomes a moment. The moment is triggered by, in this case, performance. I'm getting into the performance management. The actual homepage of the performance system is actually 1 month before it gets recomposed to host the risk data. So the manager, when it gets in, can actually prepare and understand what the risk items are. So until 1 month before, it's actually a normal page, and then it's recomposed to host that overall team view. And then as the manager walks through, all the different data that are relevant for that discussion, if there are specific flags that need to be overlaid, are actually coming to the manager without the manager having to chase that information. And so that basically provides AI, makes AI executable, makes AI really relevant for the work that the user is doing. And there is zero disruption to the underlying platform, because the underlying platform is not touched. It is important that all these assets that the company has come together at the right moment for the user. And obviously, it's very important that the data, it's actually owned by the customer. So none of this gets out of the session where the user is, in this case, the manager and the employee are actually working. None of this data gets out into the cloud, into our cloud, etc. So all of that is kept under the full control of the customer. So This was just one example. There are many, many examples that we can bring to the table. I would be very happy, of course, to share with on a separate conversation with any of the participants what other examples are. We can see this across HR, procurement, sales, finance, etc. So we don't have enough time to go through all of those, but is what we wanted to provide you here as an example is really how can you bring AI, which is normally isolated, how can you bring all of those copilots that are being developed really to be very relevant to the user at the right time in the right place.
Sure, Andrea. Thank you. I think that example around performance is quite useful. So now that Andrea has shown us the field evidence, let's map it to DXOP differentiators. There are 5 things that matter. First is DXOP is web native and zero footprint. That is important because CIOs, they do not want another heavy deployment model that creates more endpoint complexity. Second, there is no need for replatforming or system disruption. This is critical. Most enterprises have already made huge investments in systems such as SAP, Workday, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and other core platforms. So DXOP does not ask them to rip those systems out. It is an overlying layer which works across them and makes the experience more usable. Next is AI orchestration, especially paired with the fluid UX. So that combination matters. AI is not sitting somewhere else waiting for the user to go and ask a question. It is embedded into the flow of work where intelligence can actually influence action. And that's what Andrea was showing in case of that performance review. Built-in governance and data control, that's what the poll also said. As AI moves into workflows, governance cannot be an afterthought. And the last one is DXOP is relevant across cloud, on-premise, and hybrid landscape. That reflects the reality of enterprise IT. Very few organizations have perfectly clean single vendor environment. Most are hybrid, messy, and still somehow expected to deliver seamless experiences. So the field evidence tells us this, that DXOP is not a replacement story, it is an orchestration story. It helps enterprise make existing systems, AI, workflows work together in the user's moment of need, right? So now let us turn into a CIO playbook. Where should organizations start? So the best starting point are actually your high friction workflows across systems such as SAP, SuccessFactors, Salesforce, Workday, etc. These are workflows where users spend time switching context, finding information, and coordinating next steps. The second starting point could be AI features or pilots where you have seen limited adoption. So you can also start with replatforming constrained environments. So many enterprises, they cannot modify their core systems easily, especially in SAP Clean Core or constrained SaaS environments. DXOP can actually help you improve the experience without disrupting the core. The last starting point I would say is workflows where there is strict compliance or policy requirement. These are strong candidates because orchestration can embed controls directly into the execution. Now the last point, right? What should CIOs really measure? How do you make a business case for something like this, right? This is important because a new category needs a measurable business case. It cannot just sound interesting, it needs to show value. So on the right, you would see that we've divided it into 2, operational benefits and organizational benefits. So on the operational side, I would recommend measure hours recovered per employee per day, right? Process cycle time reduction, first time write rate, exception reduction, support ticket deflection, rework avoided. And on the organizational side, I would recommend measure adoption, task completion, time to proficiency, throughput per employee, process steps or clicks eliminated. In the AI world, I would say AI or agent utilization, time from insight to action. So the first DXOP project should not try to boil the ocean. It should solve a visible workflow problem and create a proof point that people can understand. So something as simple as this process used to require 2 systems 7 steps, one email, and one very patient employee, right? Now the action appears in context, the policy check happens in the flow, and the outcome is measurable. This is a story that CIOs can actually take to the board. So let us close the case now. We started with the question, who is killing enterprise productivity? The investigation showed us that the culprit is not one system, it is not one process, it is not one failed AI pilot. The deeper culprit is lack of orchestration. The broader shift that we are seeing is that enterprise software will increasingly move away from destination-based experiences. SaaS applications will remain important, so not buying into those those SaaS's end narrative. Systems of record and systems of capability will be there, but users will not want to travel across destinations for every action. They will expect work to come to them. And that is where fluid UX also becomes an important idea. It is not just a design concept, it is an operating model for enterprise work. So that may not sound as dramatic as a crime thriller, but for most enterprise users, reducing unnecessary clicks is a very satisfying ending. So we close the case here by saying that anything that makes AI usable will grow faster than AI itself. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you found the session to be helpful. Andrea and I would be happy to take any questions you may have around this category.
Thank you, Era. So please, you can actually ask questions if you have them in the specific chat for that. In the meanwhile, we have a couple of questions that already have arrived. So the first one that I will pick is a practical workflow where myMeta can show value quickly. Where obviously, we are seeing, we're working with customers. This is a new category, so it's a new approach. We've started quite recently, but if we look at what has actually landed very, very fast with some of our customers, is the capacity for customers, or the lack thereof, of having a full view of all the employee skills and competencies across the company. This is very often a very fragmented view. Companies have a very, very fragmented view of what are the capabilities of the employees. You can have, the typical data on your employee, which is more an graphical type of data. Then you have certifications, work experience, trainings, et cetera, et cetera. And very often these data is sitting across many, many different systems. And when there are solutions that are actually, people analytics that can try to bring these things together, but these are static views. Again, it is very, very important that number one, these information is collected. Number two, it is used at the moment where people actually really need it. For example, when it's career planning is being done, succession planning is being done, etc. There are several different moments where this information is required. And so what we have seen with many of our very large customers, imagine if you multiply these across 100,000 employees or 200,000 employees, how do you collect this information? Some of it, you can grab an integrate system, but some of it has to come from the employees, and simply myMeta, what myMeta can do with Orchestra very, very easily is that between integrating your LinkedIn profile, uploading your CV, and asking this transaction to be done, not just to try and find where I actually can upload my CV, but this is a fluid card that can come into your Teams or into your email that says, please complete your 80% of your profile, please complete the profile, and then all it asks you is to upload the CV or link to your LinkedIn profile, and then there's an agent behind that actually parses all that information into your employee profile very, very quickly, and obviously you can check and confirm, and that information then is available during those very important discussions, and it can really make career planning a lot more meaningful than having to work through Excel files, having to work through PDFs, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely, if I have to point one that has an immediate impact across the entire company, I can say that. I see, Era, there's another question around why does Everest Group see DXOP emerging as a new category now? I don't know if you want to answer to that.
Yes, yes. And that's a pretty interesting question and relevant as well. We see DXOP emerging now because the enterprise problem has changed. For years, the focus was on adding more applications, automating processes, improving adoption. But CIOs today are dealing with a different challenge. I would call it as, let's say, five forces. So the first one is complexity. Enterprise application landscape, it keeps expanding, but the coordination across those systems still remains inefficient. Second one is multi-agent AI, right? Organizations, they are deploying assistants and agents and co-pilots across different ecosystems, but they lack a common layer to govern and sequence those actions, right? There is ROI accountability. Boards want measurable returns from tech and AI investments, not just more deployments, right? There is this angle of human experience as well. Digital friction is now directly affecting productivity, adoption, retention. And the last one would be governance. As AI moves into real workflows, actions need to be auditable, policy aligned, and secure. So DXOP is emerging, I would say now, and it matters more and more because CIOs, they can no longer just need more technology. They need an orchestration layer which makes existing systems, workflows, data, AI work together in the user's flow of work.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. So I will actually take the next two questions and combine them in one. So how does myMeta work on top of existing enterprise systems without replatforming, and how long does it take before actually seeing the first impact, the true impact? I think this is two sides of the same question. The word replatforming or without replatforming is the key thing here. So with myMeta, you are actually bringing to life your existing assets and your existing investment. The trick here is that there is no replatforming. There is an intelligent overlay that orchestrates the experience with the right. Basically, what happens is that you get the right data through headless APIs. You normalize it against the business rules. Or normalize it against the compliance. You look at all the different contexts, front end and back end, combined together, decide which AI needs to actually intervene in that specific workflow, and then bring this fluid UI to the user. As the UI is fluid and as the intelligence is already existing, all it really needs is to build this orchestration layer in between. And without replatforming, we're actually seeing that we can go live with clear benefits for the user within the first 2 months. Obviously, it depends on how many systems you have to involve, how many workflows you have to build, etc. But the 2 months is really a very good indication to start seeing, especially if the customer has already developed all those assets and intelligence, to bring those together into a fluid UX for the user. It is a very short process, which actually is the benefit itself of DXOP in general. DXOP really needs to make sure that those assets are coming to the user, but you don't have to go through multi-million projects, replatforming, rebuilding a new destination, let's say, where user have to go. As shiny as it could be, that destination, it's still another destination that user need to know how to use. And here I'm actually asking Sylvia for help. I don't know if we're getting on our allocated slot, or there is still time for another question or two.
Yeah, we still have some time to get some questions.
Another question that I don't see this here in the chat, but another question that I get a lot is, how does myMeta work alongside the AI that the customer is already implementing or evaluating? There's many out there. Some of them are very, very common. We, at least from our point of view, we see a lot of customers using Microsoft Copilot to develop specific agents. Each vendor has its own. And here, what myMeta brings to the table is we are not replacing any of those. Actually, the more sophisticated the enterprise is, the better we are at orchestrating across. There's two differentiations. There are vendor-specific AIs that are very good or are becoming very good at actually supporting and executing within the specific silos. And then there are agents that are actually developed to be cross-functional, not necessarily dedicated to a specific ecosystem, but those lack the context to be able to support the user, lack not only the integration, but also the context to be able to support the user when the user actually needs it. And again, what I would like to highlight here is that if we give the user another tool, in this case, not to really click and fill in, but it's to prompt, there will still be friction, there will still be an adoption curve to be able to use it proficiently. And at the same time, if we don't provide the full context to the agent and the capability, not just to suggest action, but actually to perform action, no matter what the system is, these will only stay as islands, isolated from what actually the flow of work of the user needs to be. So as long as there needs to be a human in the loop, the capacity of myMeta to work alongside these tools is really to add value, to really orchestrate this intelligence and to bring it to the user at the right time in the right place.
Yeah, Andrea. So just to build on it, right? When we talk about AI copilots, you mentioned about Microsoft Copilot. I don't see them as competitor of myMeta or the DXOP category, right? What I see is both of them are complementary to each other, right? So where AI is helping systems become more intelligent, enabling action, execution, all of that, how DXOP helps is really bring that to the user and drive adoption for those capabilities, right? So that would be one. I see DXOP as complementary to AI instead of replacing or an answer to it. Second one would be if we talk about the leading SaaS platforms like SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Workday, they have built all of them have built their own AI, right? But these are not the only applications which employees use. There are a lot of custom applications which are also there, which have been built by an enterprise. Now, if you look at it from the employee's perspective, they are becoming used to that AI copilot-like experience which they get in Salesforce, in SAP, right? And they would like similar experience to be extended to these long tail of applications and the custom applications which they are building, right? So that is also where DXOP comes in, helping bring that experience to those to the tech landscape which an enterprise have. And finally, right, the human in the loop approach, that is not going anywhere, right? You need it. AI can perform the actions, but ultimately you need a human to validate the output which is being generated, the action which is being enabled, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so, to close it off from my side, I wanted to give some very practical, follow-up. Not always is easy to actually identify the actual impact of the friction across enterprise work processes. What we advise actually, and if any one of the participants or people that will listen in later on, they really want to have something tangible to work on, what we propose is to really work together in identifying critical signals coming from support tickets. We can provide this, at our own investments. If the customer gives us fully anonymized, insights like support tickets or email support that goes to, the different functions, we can come back very quickly with a full assessment of where the friction is. First of all, we can see an 80-20 rule. Very often there are very small number of categories of issues that can be grouped together that represent up to 80% of the issues. We can group those things together and we can provide an analysis of how they can be addressed through the DXOP. So what are the UX changes that need to happen? What are the automations that need to happen? What are the intelligence or data that needs to surface at the right time? and we can give an estimation of how many of those can be deflected, within a very short period of time. We can create a roadmap for the first year of the savings, potential savings, if the customer obviously is in agreement with our assessment, that can come from simply deflecting those tickets. And then, we can discuss how we can deflect an additional critical number of those by inserting the relevant AI agent to support. So, 3 steps here. First one, analyze the friction. We can do this with structured and unstructured data, and we can do it very, very fast because we have 5 years of experience where we have developed an AI model for that. We can say, category per category, the ones that have the biggest impact, and how can be deflected using the digital experience part of the UX part of improvement, and then how we can deflect another chunk of those by using AI, whether these are agents that the customer has already developed or agents that need to be developed. And then to close the loop, we can actually show how, for those small number of tickets that actually are not preventable from the beginning, how we can make it seamless for the user to actually send the feedback or open the ticket back into the support system, so that again, there's another very important piece of productivity that is gained there, because you don't have to switch into another system and try to re-explain the problem that you have and wait for an answer. So that is my practical follow-up. So if anyone is interested, please reach out and we can work with you on